I have been thinking about the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game recently, and although I don't really play competitive anymore, I've had like little dabbles in it recently by playing like you guys online and everything. And I've been playing with like meta decks and I've been playing against meta decks, and there's some things that I've noticed that I just want to talk about for a little bit. This is an unscripted video. There's no things I can read there, you can probably tell. But it's just something about the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game that I'm not a massive fan of, that I kind of wish would go away in a way, but there are some reasons why it should stay the way it is. And I want to try and cover both of those things in this video, so yeah, let's talk about it. So what is it that I have an issue with? Well, it's generic cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! And what I mean by generic cards is not like things that are supposed to be generic. Harpy's Feather Duster, Raigeki, Torrential Tribute, Mirror Force, some bad examples there, but those are cards that are designed to slip into any deck, anywhere, and they have a function. They're to destroy all cards on your opponent's side of the field, to deal with this kind of situation, like the Solemn series, Solemn Warning to stop a monster from being summoned, Solemn Judgment to stop something really powerful from being used, Super Polymerization, another generic card that is really good, and I think that's good that that can fit into any kind of deck. However, the type of generic card that I don't like is the boss monster that is a boss monster of a archetype that can go in anything. So these are cards like Borrel Dragon. It is a Borrel monster, a part of the Borrel archetype. However, to summon it, you don't need to play a single Borrel card in your entire deck. You can put that in anything. You've got things like Borrel Sword. It's a lot of the Borrels I'm starting to notice. Borrel Sword, Borrel Load, Topologic, Bomber Dragon, I guess, to a degree. But there are other things, of course, not just Link monsters. We have Synchro monsters, like Brionac, Dragon of the Ice Barrier, Trishula, things like this. These are cards that require generic tuners and generic monsters to be summoned, and they can go in any deck, and the problem with them is they're super powerful. Now, I don't really know if this is actually an issue. This is just something that I personally dislike in Yu-Gi-Oh! The fact that if I had an archetype of Ice Barrier monsters, the one thing I can say is that my boss monster, Brionac, for example, is really powerful, and I play this deck to get that monster out because this is my win condition. It's the reason why I play this deck. But the problem with having the genericness to it is that that card can go in any deck. So why would I put Brionac, Dragon of the Ice Barrier in an inferior deck when I can get it, put it in something else, and it'll be summoned even easier out? And that's kind of my biggest problem with generic boss monsters. I'm sure there's some spells and traps that are a part of an archetype that can go into any cards. Like, I can't really think of an example right now, but like Gem Knight Fusion, you do have to play a Gem Knight in your deck, but I think you only need to play like one or two, and then it serves its function, because you just get the one from the deck, you fuse with it, and then you get the extra deck one out, and then that lets you summon again. So I guess that kind of falls in the generic category to a degree, but I do like the fact that you have to play the Gem Knights with it. It's a double-edged sword, isn't it, really? Because I can see why Konami does this, and I can see why I personally don't like this as well. So the reason I don't like it, we've just discussed. I'm really excited to play my Ice Barriers, my Borrel deck, and I would imagine it's a little bit disheartening to get your boss monster out, and your opponent playing whatever meta deck they're playing, they can get it out just as fast, maybe even faster. I feel like it depreciates the value of the archetype they come from. I feel like decks should have boss monsters that are unique just to them. Like the Predaplant series as well, like Starving Venom, Fusion Dragon and that. That's a bit of a different thing because all of the Dimension Dragons aren't really archetype exclusive. That monster can fit into a lot of other decks, and there are some other of those plant fusion monsters that can go in some other decks. What's that Link monster? The Verdant Predaplant thing. So you special summon this Link monster, right? All it needs is 2 monsters, I think. It might be a bit more specific, but it doesn't require anything to do with plants or anything like that. You get that out, you pay 2,000 life points, you pick any polymerization card from your deck, activate it, and you can summon any fusion monster from your extra deck. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. And that can fit in anything. If that had just said, this requires 2 Predaplant monsters to be summoned, then I wouldn't really be complaining about it too much. Or if the only card it could summon is a Predaplant monster as well, that has a bit of an issue as well, because your deck isn't then based around it, you just put it in the extra deck. But you can see what I'm kind of saying. That's my problem with generic boss monsters and generic archetypal cards that can just go in anything. Now let me put my biases aside for just 1 second and let's look at the other side of the fence. Let's look at Konami's point of view. Why would you want to make generic boss monsters? Well, it's quite simple really. It is mainly for financial gain, but there's also another reason. If you make a super powerful boss monster of an archetype, Borrelode Dragon, Borrel Sword Dragon, just use these two for an example, everyone's going to see this and think, wow, these are really powerful. Now, if they were exclusive just to the Borrel archetype, so you can only summon this card by using Borrel monsters, whatever, then people will say, that's a cool card, but I don't play a Borrel deck. I don't have all the cards, so unfortunately I can't use it. If you're a Borrel player, holy hype, this is going to be awesome. But if we look at actually what they have done, by making Borrelode Dragon free for everyone, everybody sees this card now, says, wow, that's an amazing card, I have to get it and put it in my extra deck. So every deck can use this brand new, awesome, powerful monster. Everyone will go out and buy the packs that it comes in, or just buy it outright if they can, and they will put that in their deck. So Konami makes more money, and everybody doesn't miss out. And I can kind of understand that, but at the same time, if you're a Borrel archetype user exclusively, then it's a bit of a shame. Oh, everyone can use my boss monster. That sucks. I don't know, it's such a weird thing. I feel like it's... I don't want to say it's 50-50. It's like, I think it's fair and I think it's unfair as well. I do personally believe archetypal boss monsters should be a part of their archetype only. I feel like everything should have been restricted to their own thing. But like obviously there's generic ones, like 5 God Dragon isn't part... This is a bad example obviously, but that just requires 5 dragon type monsters. Throw that into whatever dragon deck you want to. That's absolutely fine. You get cards that are kind of like teetering around the generic but also archetypal. We've had that Red Eyes Dark Dragoon monster recently, and I've been playing against that and that's so strong. But all it really requires to be summoned is a Red Eyes monster or a Dark Magician monster and 1 dragon type monster or something like that. I think it's just a Dark Magician and a... It's a Dark Magician and a Dragon monster, I think, all it needs for its summon. Which is like, it's teetering on generic. As long as you've got a Dark Magician in your deck, you can get away with that. I put a community post recently asking a couple people for it. I haven't actually checked it now, but here it is, right here on screen. So you can see some of the things that people have suggested that I didn't have time for. I wrote down a couple like extra deck monsters that I thought were generic but archetypal. So I wrote things like, obviously, all the Borrelodes, Dante, Traveler of the Burning Abyss. That kind of fits in anything, and it can be summoned by anything. Stardust Dragon, Black Rose Dragon, the Signer Dragons. That's a hard one to say. I think they're more in the generic category, so I think they might be okay. Gagaga Cowboy. Is this a Gagaga monster? Maybe it should only be summoned by Gagagas, Go-Go-Go's, Do-Do-Dos, and Zubababas. God, that archetype's a mess. The Nightmares. Now, I didn't know Nightmares actually were a part of a bigger, broader archetype. But, like, you got Nightmare Phoenix, Nightmare... oh, I forgot the rest. There's Phoenix. There's Griffin. Cerberus. And then there's some other ones that people don't really play. But they, like, deal with different situations. And like, I don't know, maybe they could be generic, but they're not generic. Wind Up Zen Mains, this is going back a long time when that used to be meta. Scrap Dragon, does have some abilities to do with scraps, I do think, if it's destroyed, but don't quote me on that one. Phantom Knights a Break Sword. Crystal Wings, Synchro Dragon. The Dimension Dragons from Arc 5, they're kind of generic as well, so I think we can give them a little bit of a pass. But there is a Predaplant deck, and Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, I guess it's not really, I don't know, it should be fine. To me, there's like 3 tiers. There's the purely generic cards that should be available to everyone. They're the Monster Reborns, the Heavy Storms, Solemn Judgments. And then you've got the sort of semi-generic cards that are tailored towards certain types of archetypes. So you've got things like Reinforcements of the Army. It lets you add a warrior type monster from your deck to your hand. So that only fits in certain types of decks. And then obviously you've got everything else with the boss monsters that can slip into anything. So yeah, that's all I really wanted to talk about today. I just wanted to have a little chat with you about it. I haven't done one of these little standing up videos in ages. We're at a different angle today. You can see my clothes. Nice.